about reishi many, many years ago when I was living in Japan, when my sister had breast cancer in Brazil and I was sending her reishi. But we will go there to talk about reishi. But first, I'm kind of curious. How did you get involved with herbs, but most specifically with mushrooms?
Great question. It was never a plan. It was not, okay, I'm going to focus my life on functional mushrooms. But when I look back at all these different chapters of my life, there were kind of the fungi slowly rearing their heads. So, as a young girl, I was really interested in environmental studies, and that was my big path. I was a big environmental activist for many years, and it took me to discover permaculture and organic gardening. And I really fell in love with large scale industrial composting systems, which is where the fungi are so integral to the system of composting and soil health. And so that was really this initial peaking of it. And I studied environmental studies and philosophy in my undergraduate degree and then moved to Asia. And I started working for a travel company, and in between running these courses into the backcountry where I would live with hill tribe villages for 3 weeks at a time. I'd take these groups out. And of course, mushroom medicine is still very alive in the Asian cultures, where in the West we're remembering. It's not like they haven't been here, but they're not as common in the past several hundred years for many reasons, which is for another conversation. But living with hill tribe villages, it was really going out and foraging for the first time. And I foraged morels for the first time in India with a host mama, and would go out and pick herbal medicine in these villages where Western medicine and hospital systems just weren't accessible. We would actually be hiking and backpacking for several days to get to some of these villages. And so there was
Wow.
this little spark, and I really fell in love with this way of life. It was fascinating that it was so absent in the Western culture I'd grown up in. And so I started, while living out there, kind of diving into every opportunity I could to study herbal medicine and the different aspects of it. So I became a yoga instructor and got really into Ayurvedic medicine living in India. And I studied with a naturopathic doctor in Indonesia for some time. And it was after about 3 years out there that I said, okay, it's time to formalize what herbal medicine could look like in my life. And so I moved to Boulder, Colorado, where there's a wonderful school, the Colorado School of Clinical Herbalism. And I ended up opening a private practice from there. It's a clinical degree route. And as is the case with probably many of the practitioners you're speaking with in this summit, the theme of the clients that were coming to me had said, hey, I've tried every practitioner and you're my last resort. And so what this brought, without me planning in any way, was a lot of chronic illness, a lot of autoimmune conditions, a lot of molds, misdiagnosed ailments that the Western world slapped a label on, but were actually inaccurate to what the individual was experiencing. And with this kind of range, there was actually very few plant medicines that were both safe enough and effective enough to really start having an effect on people's immune system. And so I started becoming really fascinated with the fungi, in particular the functional fungi, which we can talk about and how to define those, because fungi are an entire biological kingdom. But
Definitely.
in a matter of months, the vitality, the life force, the chi, the prana in so many of these individuals was beginning to awaken again. And it really was the formulas led by the functional mushrooms that were responsible for this. And so I started asking, why isn't this more prominent in the West? Where are the mushrooms, and where are they on the shelves and in our foods and in our beverages? And this should be such an integral part of our healing and our daily vitality practices. And so about 5 years ago, I joined forces with Four Sigmatic, as you mentioned, which at the time was really the only functional mushroom consumer product good brand on the market that was offering the medicine in the traditional way, which is really, really important. And we can get into the pillars of what that means, but offering it from nature, organic, wild harvested, extracted in the way that these mushrooms are actually bioavailable to our bodies. And in my private practice, I was like, I could only handle so much. It was like I wanted to
I know what
to
you
get
mean.
you get it. It's like, how do we actually like really amplify these mushrooms into more people? And so, anyways, yeah, 5 years ago was this wonderful merging, and with Forcing Matic, I've been formulating and innovating and educating, and of course, the last 2 years have been devoted to writing this book about healing mushrooms, which include, healing adaptogens, which include the 5 key mushrooms, as well as 16 other plant-based adaptogens that are so relevant, and now we're seeing them pop up all over the place. But I find there's still a really deep need for consumer education so that we're actually purchasing supplements that are working for us, right? It's like the most
Yeah,
expensive supplement.
yeah, exactly. And I'm very glad you're here, because I think that's one of the purpose of this summit, is to educate, inform, and especially people who have chronic conditions and autoimmune disease. It's like you're saying, many times is the last resort. They go to so many things and trying to figure out what can help them. And the
Yes.
quality of supplement is something very, very important, instead of paying for something that does not have the nutrients that the person really needs. And also to inform, to really inform about mushrooms. I'm sure that in the audience, many people do not know, do not have the information. So I'm very, very appreciative that you're here.
Yes,
I'm like, oh
absolutely.
yes, we need this information out, and
Yes.
it is important. It is important. So now, I do not know what is functional mushroom. So if you can
Let's break it down.
let's break down what is that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So fungi, as I briefly mentioned, are their own biological kingdom, which we're part of the animal kingdom. There's the plant kingdom. Fungi are their own kingdom, and it's massive. So when people hear mushroom, we often think of a portobello or a poisonous mushroom or a psychedelic mushroom. And I really want to clear the air and share that what we're talking about when we call functional mushrooms or functional fungi are very different than the culinary, the psychedelic, the poisonous mushrooms out there. And just to give people an idea of how vast this kingdom is, so we can really separate all the different types. If you
Mhm.
think of all of the plants that you can name, of all the plants in the world, every fruit, vegetable, tree, brush, grass, grain, what we know are there are at least 6 times the amount of fungi as there are all plant species on the planet.
Oh my gosh, I had
So
no idea. This is huge. This is
this
huge.
is massive, massive, massive. And of course, not all of those produce mushrooms. Some live in other forms like black mold and dangerous fungi that we want to stay away from. But of this subsect of mushrooms, there are about 600 or 700 that are considered functional or medicinal. And a very basic distinction is many of the mushrooms we think of, culinaries, psychedelic, poisonous mushrooms, these grow from the earth, from the ground. Our functional mushrooms almost always, there's one exception I'll talk about, but almost always are growing from trees or growing from logs. So they're much more earthy. They're called polypores often. They have a hard, conky look to them. So they're very, very different than the classic culinary varieties that we're used to. And they have a very deep tradition of use. You mentioned 5,000 years. Some of them, like reishi, we have evidence even more than that, right? There's different pictorial evidence and storied evidence and written evidence of how long they have been used by humans for their utilitarian, their medicinal properties. And reishi is among the most popular and most revered. We also have chaga, as we talked on lion's mane. Cordyceps is kind of a fourth, and turkey tail are probably the big five that we're seeing. And these are because there's this amazing intersection of tradition. And so the anecdotal evidence, the stories that have been written down, which I value
I
very
value that too.
immensely. Like
Yeah.
that's the
And
bulk of
you
it.
talk
If
about reishi, and it really reminds me of Japan, because I lived in Japan. My husband is Japanese. I lived in Japan for 12 years.
yes,
And even culinary, they have so many mushrooms there too in the kitchen, in the Japanese
yes,
kitchen. And then I always remember the reishi, because my sister said, this is horrible.
Yeah, it's bitter.
And I said,
Really
it is,
bitter,
but you
huh?
drink it. And she did. She's very well right now, which is very good.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they have been, even Japan, such a modern country full of technology and everything, but Japan honors the tradition. They honors,
Yes.
we call it also kampoyaku, which is like coming from plants and things
Mm.
that are more natural in terms of medicine. So they really honor and use that. They are quite aware of that. Yeah.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah, and there is some overlap. There's some functional mushrooms so that have this known studied medicinal benefit to the human body that we can also ingest, right? In Japan, we have the maitake and shiitake and anokatake, and these are foods, they're also medicines. And the difference is the dose, right? How are we extracting them? What potency are we taking them at? And that's really going to determine, just like many other things in our kitchen, right? That are herbs. We use many medicines, whether it's rosemary or thyme or garlic or cayenne. These can be used in a small culinary dosage or a really strong medicinal dose. But yeah, this category, when we say functional, it essentially means there's known studied benefits, whether it's traditionally and storied and anecdotally, or we have an amazing amount of scientific research, especially in the past 50 years, to confirm the benefits that have long been discussed in primarily these Eastern traditions.
And I'm so glad about that because, some people are very suspicious also that you say this is really good for your health. And I don't want to know about this. This is
Yeah.
science is not there, but it's good to have scientific, not everybody needs, but some people need. And I think it's good to have scientific research behind that and confirming their benefits. So it's not
Yes.
just a tale, it's
Yes.
real.
Yes.
It's real and it's
Absolutely.
important. Very good,
Yeah.
very good.
In the process of writing Healing Adaptogens, I read through over 1,000 gold standard clinical trials, so double-blind, placebo-controlled, to really pick out. I mean, there's that many out there on these ingredients, and to really highlight, okay, these are the top studies that show on humans, ideally, double-blind at a high dosage, similar to how we will want to use them for things like longevity and gut health, immunomodulation. Um, and we need that, right? Some people are like, show me the science. Some are, show
Yeah.
me how long it's been used. I don't care if it's this brand new thing off the press. I want to know that people have tried it and experienced it and have been able to tell the story and say, hey, this is safe, and pass it on to their children and grandchildren and so on. And with the mushrooms, we have both, which is so wonderful.
Oh, wonderful. And just even the numbers are incredible because you said 700 of them are functional mushrooms. And
Yes.
I know two like names of two probably,
Yeah.
and not knowing much and also having more than 1,000 scientific researches to go through. That's amazing. And it's important that people start to really know about this. This is wonderful. So
Yes.
can you talk about this part of the immunity and the mushrooms, especially because we are here, the audience is for autoimmunity, but also for chronic conditions or conditions that many times we don't have a name for it, that they
Yeah.
haven't received a diagnosis, but they have many symptoms and not feeling well.
Yeah. So there is a group of sugars, we'll keep it really simple, that are consistent among our key functional mushrooms. The type of sugar, it's very different than our table sugar. They're called polysaccharides, so these long, complex sugar chains. And the type we mostly find in our functional mushrooms are called 1,3 and 1,6 beta D glucans. And so when we're looking at our reishi, our chaga, our lion's mane, all of them contain these beta glucans, polysaccharides. And what they do, they're called, a lot of big terminology, but they're called immunomodulating polysaccharides.
Okay,
Okay. And
can you repeat that? I think it's
yes,
good because I would like to.
yes, immunomodulating polysaccharides. And so we can,
Modulating polysaccharides. Okay,
yes,
that's something is good for the immune system here.
yes. So we can break down what this really means. Typically, when we're thinking about herbs or ingredients for our immune system, often they're either stimulating, right? So people say, oh, take echinacea or golden seal to quickly stimulate your immune system. And the problem with that is it should really only be used short term, right? You want, for example, echinacea, the most popular
Yeah.
immunostimulant out there in the herbal world. When you taste echinacea on your tongue, there's these compounds called alkalamides, and they trick your system to thinking that there's a foreign antigen in you. And so in response, your immune system produces all these white blood cells to temporarily fight off that supposed antigen. And that works for a couple days to a week max. But we really don't want to continue to trick our system for more than, say, 5 to 7 days. Especially in the case of autoimmune bodies, right? We already have overactive immune activity happening. What a lot of my clients would be put on is an immunosuppressant, right? You have too much immune activity. So we either have one end, the immune stimulant, or the other, the immunosuppressant. But what
Yeah.
happens when we're continuously suppressing our immune system is we then become vulnerable, right? So any antigen, someone coughs on you, you travel, you're in a foreign environment, your body becomes really susceptible to contracting whatever is out there in that environment. And so functional fungi have this really interesting intersection where they modulate. You can think of this like cruise control for the immune system. So they have the ability to both stimulate certain immune cells. We can go through, depending on the mushroom itself, some stimulate B cells, T cells, natural killer cells. And so the same body, if you and I both, every body is unique and different, which is
I
so
believe
key to
I believe
so
that very well. Yeah.
so
You
deeply,
know,
and we've
yeah.
always recognized that as herbalists and as people working with plants, and we know, okay, everybody is unique in some way. And um, part of the magic really of these functional mushrooms is working with the individual system to either stimulate, so it had that same, if we both took the exact same amount of reishi mushroom extract from the same tree, same dosage, same moment, because our bodies are different. Let's say, Roberta, you have overactive immunity and have been diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. That reishi mushroom extract could down regulate immune activity in your body. But in my system, and I just got back from traveling and my immune system, let's say, is a bit suppressed, that same reishi mushroom extract could actually stimulate immune activity in my system. So, like this cruise control, it has the ability to downregulate or stimulate based on the individual body's needs.
Wow, that's amazing, because that's like a inner wisdom and intelligence of the plant and the body, and
Yes,
this communication between the plant and the body. This is beautiful. Wow, I
it
think. Yeah.
truly is. It's like matchmaking in a lot of
Yeah.
ways of we're working together synergistically with the medicine of the fungi, with the medicine of the plants. And so all of our key functional mushrooms that are really becoming popularized in the last few years, they all have this ability to modulate immunity. So whether we're talking about reishi, lion's mane, chaga, turkey tail, cordyceps, they all share this beta D glucan polysaccharide chain. So, a few years ago, if you went into a grocery store and you said, hey, do you have any mushroom supplements? They would be under the aisle labeled immune or immune support because of this reason.
Oh,
So just like us, we're individuals and we have many things. Like, for example, the two of us have a lot in common. We're sitting here on I
yeah.
don't know what day it is, Tuesday afternoon, discussing mushrooms and autoimmunity, but we bring additional things to the table, to our practices, to our life. So similarly with our fungi, not only do they have these polysaccharides, there's many others, identified, some yet to be identified, constituents or compounds that exist within the mushrooms that offer unique benefits, right? So why we take reishi for some reasons, or chaga for others, or lion's mane for others. So all of them, in a grouped category, are immune supporting, and can be taken long term. That's the
That's
other.
what I was gonna ask you, because you mentioned about echinacea and or echinacea.
Yes,
Forgive my foreigner
great.
pronunciation sometimes.
No
But
worries.
it's like it should not take more than 6, 7 days. And then
Right.
I wanted to ask about the mushrooms in terms of time and duration that they can be taken, or if depending on the mushroom, this is different also.
Yeah, the tradition is to take long term more as
Oh.
a tonic, a daily tonic, as opposed to a medicine itself. So when we look at ancient texts in China using reishi or lion's mane with some of the Japanese, it's called Yamabushi mushroom in Japan because of these Yamabushi forest monks using the mushroom supposedly to help them with meditation, right? We have all these different amazing origin stories, but in all of them, they were never taken just for a few moments or a day or a week. It was actually used as part of um, a daily regimen for
Mhm.
long term health. So whether that's for weeks or months, sometimes with especially reishi, the recommendation is to take it for years. Um, and so that's a really different approach, right? We think of
Yeah.
preventative, we think of
I was going to say, because Asia and especially in Japan, they have this really strong idea of being preventive. It's better to prevent to get sick. And I think right now in terms of country, they have the longest longevity in terms of years of the population. It's many things. Part of that is not only one, but I think one of them is this idea of being preventive. And so you're taking, I like this word you used, a daily tonic. You
yes,
have that every day, so it helps your body to correct what it needs to correct, modulate what you need to modulate in a very nice way, because it's continuously, not just something here and you're done, or and then take this forever and destroy the rest, which is sometimes
right.
the medicine does. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So they're incredibly powerful, long revered tradition. We have ongoing, but especially the last, several decades, this incredible research to discuss these immunomodulation benefits, as well as more and more compounds that we're discovering in each of them. Like in reishi, particularly, reishi has been the most revered. So in all of traditional Chinese medicine, right, still the second largest practice system of medicine on the planet today, aside from Western medicine. Reishi is known as the number one. There's three categories of different herbs in all of TCM.
Mhm.
And reishi is in this top category. They're called superior tonics. And of all the superior tonics, reishi is the number one. So the first of several thousand different ingredients, both plants and fungi and animal parts used for their medicinal benefits. Reishi is this top rated, and has these amazing names as such, like 10,000 year mushroom and immortality mushroom, because of these long term benefits that have been recognized and documented.
It's wonderful. No, it's wonderful. I'm very happy that I discovered reishi then, when I think this was 20 years ago. It was
Wow.
20 years ago when I sent to my sister, and I did not know much, but they talk about in Japan, and it's more common because they are more open for this part of thing. Although I'm from Brazil, in Brazil we look a lot at herbs, but not mushroom much, but herbs,
Yeah.
and we are quite open to heal from, I think, from the Indians and from the forest is right there, so I think it's more available, so we are accustomed for that tradition. So it was good to know that, and have sent to my sister. I don't know, I felt I contributed. so
Amazing.
so now you're talking about the supplements, and I would like to know also about like the source, and if you can talk about extraction, the preparation, and then if this is connecting also with the quality of supplements, the quality of what someone is buying, and
Yeah.
how can we know, and what should we look for when we are reading a label, for example. I know it's a long question, so just go the way that is better for you.
I'm so glad you asked this. It's a huge issue, and especially right now, I think we're entering this shroom boom. There's more and more mushroom companies coming on the market, and brands are saying, "Oh, this is a trend," and they're putting small amounts in all sorts of products. From I see shampoos to
Right.
mints and so many different things. And uh, I as we talked about, the most expensive supplements you'll ever buy are the ones that don't work. And what drives me crazy
I was
is,
getting crazy and angry from the
yeah,
family. Yeah.
people spending money on supplements not only not working, but then also saying uh, that ingredient doesn't work. I don't believe in the value or the benefits of these ingredients. And so being conscious consumers is so important. And to put this into perspective a bit, there was an article that came out in the Scientific Journal, and it said that 73% of reishi products sold in the United States contain no reishi mushroom whatsoever.
Oh my gosh, 73 is a huge number. It's a high number to say there is no content of the ingredient they're selling.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So why is this, and how do you know what you're purchasing? There's really three key pillars, and then there's two kind of benefits that I'll go through. The first is ensuring that you're actually getting the mushroom itself. This might sound funny, but the mushroom is considered the fruiting body. So think of it like the apple on the tree, right? There's many other parts of the apple tree, but if you want to get the benefits of the apple, you wouldn't go and take a piece of the apple leaf or the apple bark. Similarly,
That makes
similarly in the,
sense. That makes sense now that you're
yeah,
saying this. Yeah.
yeah. And with many of our herbs, right? It's like when we talk about echinacea, we want to use the root, right? We don't want the seed or the leaf. Or if we talk
Mhm.
about ginger, we want to use the root. We don't want the leaf. So we have to make sure we're getting the right part. And when it comes to the functional mushrooms, the part that is above ground or the side of trees is this fruit. So it's the full expression. It's the last phase of the life cycle before the mushroom creates spores, seeds, and sporulates and starts the life cycle over again. And so, what a lot of brands are doing today is selling either partially or all different parts. And when we talk about the mushrooms, there's what is within a tree base or underneath the ground. It's essentially this root system. It's called mycelium. And mycelium can't be harvested out in nature. So in the forest, this is completely intertwined with other microorganisms and the soil and bacteria. But when you cultivate mushrooms in a laboratory environment, right, in this clean, sterile environment, the mycelium can be harvested, although we have no herbal tradition for that. And so a lot of what you'll see is, and you have to look at other ingredients and ingredients on your label for the word mycelium. And that will indicate that you're getting the roots of the mushroom as opposed to the mushroom itself.
Wow.
So this is the first big thing to look out for. And we're also seeing all sorts of other kind of shady marketing terms where I think a lot of the mushroom space is stealing verbiage from the cannabis space and using words like full spectrum or
Hmm.
I don't know, like trickery. It's really challenging, in a consumer space.
It reminds me of the name of sugar. I have a list of 67,
Yes.
I think it's 67, I don't remember. I have in my computer and like, wow, this is incredible. 67 different names for sugar so that when you see the label, you recognize they are adding sugar in a particular food or something that you're buying because it's like trying to disguised with a strange name or something that
Right.
sounds natural and good, but in fact is very
Yep.
bad for your body, this type of
Yep.
thing. Yeah. So that's
No,
very important to get more informed. Yeah.
I'm so glad you have that on your website. It's so true. It's like, even if you learn to read the label, you're like, well, how do I know that this sucrose, fructose, fructose corn syrup is all the sugar? So
Exactly.
that's so important. And yeah, it just made me think of something else. When we're buying the mushroom, before we even say, okay, what part of the mushroom I'm getting, you really want to ensure that you're getting the correct species. And this sounds like obvious. Like, how could someone sell the wrong species? But it happens. And I see this on the grocery shop all the time, where on the front it says reishi. Let's say we're talking about reishi now. And then in the back, you should really see the Latin name, right? So the Latin name is
Mhm.
consistent no matter where you are, what country you are on the planet. So with reishi, you want Ganoderma lucidum, and then the common name is reishi. Or, when you were living in in Japan, you might have heard it called lingxi, which is the Chinese name for it, right? There's all these different common names, but that true Latin name will indicate the exact species that you're getting. And so, okay, am I
Let me
actually?
tell the audience, you don't need to be scary. Danielle is giving her book, a copy of her ebook here. We're
Yes,
going to talk about that. You will have that name written in the book
yes,
because it's like a
yes,
name, I cannot even pronounce correctly, even though it's
yes.
similar to my native language, though.
That's why, yeah,
Yeah,
having a reference and saying, okay, yeah, you don't have to commit these all to memory, but say, okay, is this the true reishi? Is it the real mushroom, right? Am I actually getting the fruiting body itself? And that's important, one, because in all the several thousand years of traditions that we've been using functional mushrooms and writing about them and documenting how they are affecting our bodies, it's always been using this fruiting body. So we have the several thousand years to back that. And then also with the research, what we found is that the mushroom fruiting body itself has 40 times the amount of active compounds, including these polysaccharides that are modulating our immune system, as does the mycelium, right? So it's really the gold standard. This is where the medicine lies.
yeah. And I think this is so important because, as you said before, it's not only, which is really bad, the companies are doing this. And of course, it's not all the companies, but also for the person who is taking, who is going to say, no, this doesn't work at all, and spread the word of something that is not true, but it's
Yeah,
because it got a product of low quality, and then
right.
now saying, oh, no, this doesn't work at all. It's
Yep.
not true. And
Yeah.
that's, the two sides of it, which is really bad, and for the company and for the person who is consuming, who can be really, besides that, it's not getting the benefit, but also spreading the word that this doesn't work, which is not true.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's just pillar one, the
Pillar
real
one,
mushroom fruiting
okay.
body. Pillar two is ensuring that the mushroom is grown on wood, right? We spoke about the reishi, chaga, lion's mane. These are all found on wood, not on soil, out in the wild in the forest. And um, mushrooms are very similar to humans, actually. We share about 40 to 50% of our DNA with them. One of the commonalities is that we are absorbing a lot of, basically, mushrooms can't photosynthesize like plants, right? They need external nutrients in order to grow and thrive, just like we do. And so, where do those nutrients come from? They come from the substrate, the medium, the tree that they're growing on out in nature. And so, for example, chaga, which we can talk about next, the king of mushrooms, the most antioxidant rich food on the planet, incredible species. One of the key compounds that is studied in chaga is called betalainic acid, and that is from betalain, which is found in the bark of the birch tree that chaga grows on. Right, so it's this direct conversion. We've all heard we are what we eat. Mushrooms are what they eat as well, and so we want to ensure that we're getting wood or log grown mushrooms, or wild harvested mushrooms, right, that are actually coming from the forest. And the alternative to this, that we're seeing again in the majority of products on the market, are mushrooms that have been grown on grain. So on different substrates like oat or rice or wheat. You have to be very careful, especially if you have dietary restrictions and autoimmune conditions that don't allow you to eat some of these grains. I had to learn this the hard way with clients, and so you're saying, "Oh, go take this reishi mushroom for your X, Y, and Z symptoms," and instead you're dosing them with that allergen. So ensuring that the mushroom is not grown on a grain is
And
not only going
especially
to
even a lot of grains and wheat cause inflammation in the body. This
absolutely
autoimmune is one of the
big
causes of the
time,
whole thing, big time. So
big time.
very, very important. And how we would know it's a would be in the label, or should I like go to the company online and research about how would I know how it is grown?
Yeah, two things. Really, if you see the word mycelium on it, it should be your first flag that it's grown
Just
on some
flag.
sort of grain. Because when you're growing in a lab, so you have a mason jar full of grain that has been sterilized, and then you inoculate a spore of a mushroom. And essentially, the longer you let that spore grow, the more it begins to eat the grain and grow more mycelium. right? So over time, you'll have less grain, more mycelium, right? It's eating and digesting and growing that. And as I mentioned, mycelium can't be harvested out in nature. So if it's growing, being grown, in a lab and sold as mycelium, it's very likely that it's being grown on a grain. And the other thing is you'll
and
often
has 40 times less any property that the fruit itself would have, because I remember you
precisely.
mentioned exactly.
Yep. And then a lot of times other ingredients on a supplement panel will have to disclose the grain. So you'll see other ingredients rice or other ingredients oat. And that's a big red flag. Like there should never be oat or rice or barley or corn or soy in our mushroom products. And
That's
a quick
very good to know. Also, very good to know.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, a quick way to think of this, in terms of quality again is uh in the meat space, if someone's a meat eater, it's pretty widely recognized that if you get a free range grass-fed piece of meat, it'll be very different than meat, from an animal that was fed grains and soy and ingredients
No
that it was
space
never
to
evolved to
walk
eat.
and lots of antibiotics,
Right?
Yeah.
Night and day. So same things with our mushrooms. If we're getting the mushroom from the forest, right, grown on the being fed the ingredients it was evolved to feed, that final mushroom is very, very different than a mushroom that's never seen the light of day, that's been grown in a sterile environment in a lab on grains that it has never evolved to eat. Right. So really
Kind of feel
different
even
things.
sad, I don't know, I feel even sad with that, because it's
Yeah,
this is for our health, and yet being used, for just to make a profit. It's very,
totally.
yeah, very upsetting.
Yeah, because when you grow mycelium grain, it's very time efficient and it's very cheap, right? Compared to actually waiting for the full mushroom to fruit, and then which I'll get into next is the extraction process. So yeah, for efficiency and business reasons, that's where it's actually about 10% the cost to just grow the roots
Wow.
on grain as it is to go and get a real true mushroom that's been grown on wood.
I'm very
Um,
glad we are learning with you here. Thank you so much
good.
for
Yeah.
sharing this, because I think
Yeah.
it's key, it's important
Yeah,
for the
of course.
audience and for everyone, and I hope this spread more and more. Yeah,
Likewise, same.
yeah.
So we have real mushroom, right? Making sure you're getting the fruiting body, the mushroom itself. Two is that it's log grown, wood grown. There's no fillers or grains. And then the third piece is extraction.
Mm.
This is really key. There's many ingredients that need to be extracted or prepared in a certain way in order for our bodies to digest them, right? Think about like, I don't know, grain of rice, right? Yeah, sure, we could have the grain of rice and it will be like an insoluble fiber,
Yeah, exactly.
important in its own ways, but we're not getting the nutrients from that rice, right? So similarly with our functional mushrooms, in their raw form, even if they're a full fruiting body, a full mushroom grown on that wood out in nature, uh, they're known as inedible in that original form. And this is because of a compound that's found in their cell wall. It's called chitin, and it's the same compound found in crustacean shells. So think of a crab or lobster or shrimp shell that's very tough. And our bodies don't contain chitinase, the enzyme to break
Great.
down that chitin. And so if we, I'll see this a lot of times. There's like, I live in Los Angeles, there's chagachinos and all of these things where they're just taking a mushroom powder and grinding it up and saying, hey, put this in your smoothie or throw this in your soup. But not all mushroom powders are created equal. A lot of these, again, extraction takes time and money, and it's a much longer intensive process. But if we don't do it and we're just having a raw or ground up mushroom powder, it's all it is insoluble fiber, right? It's like we have all this
So you cannot
golden
break down,
compound.
and so you cannot break down. So it means you cannot have the nutrients, you cannot have the health benefits of
Right.
what you are ingesting. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, in order to extract and break open that chitin cell wall, there's two traditional ways to do this. One is through hot water. So, it's called a decoction, long hot water boil. I think of medicine men and women stirring these cauldrons of mushrooms for many hours, if not many days. Typically, a standard decoction, we would want to boil the mushroom for at least 6 to 8 hours. And I'll actually see that on some brands, everyone is going to start really looking at the ingredient labels, you'll see for best results on some powders, boil for 6 to 8 hours. It's like, that's sneaky. Who's going to boil this powder for 6 to 8 hours, right? So the key is the word extraction. And yeah, so that water extraction is the first way to break open the chitin. The second way is through ethanol or through alcohol, right, in a tincture form. Both are good, right? They're pulling out different compounds from the mushroom itself. When we're talking about the benefits for the immune system and modulating the immune system, we're really referring to those sugars, right? The polysaccharides. Sugars are water soluble, right? We know that sugars dissolve in water. And so if you want the benefits for the immune system, having a water extraction is
key.
Is really key. Yeah. And or you can see some brands like what we do at Four Sigmatic and some others, Real Mushrooms and Mushroom Wisdom. There's some great brands out there do a double extraction, which means you're doing both the alcohol and the hot water, kind of like eating all parts of an animal. You know, if you consume meat, you're getting the bones and the organs and throwing it all in there. So but the word extract will ensure that all of the medicinal compounds are actually bioavailable to your body. Okay, so
and that's important. Bioavailable means really you can, it can be absorbed as a nutrient. Yeah.
So these are the key three. You know, you have the real mushroom fruiting body. It's grown on logs or wood, and it's been extracted properly. And then kind of the bonus that I mentioned is, which isn't really bonus, they should be checked off as well. It goes into your question about quality, is the cleanliness. And so mushrooms are known as bioaccumulators in the environment. They can absorb a lot of either nutrients, they can also absorb a lot of heavy metals from the substrate that they're growing off of. Environmentally, this is really wonderful, right? We're finding there's a whole field called mycoremediation, which is fungi being able to break down plastics and clean up oil spills and absorb all of these toxic ingredients from water or a waste site.
Which is
But when
wonderful. Yeah. But we don't want to eat those
amazing.
mushrooms that
Don't
are
want to
cleaning
eat
all the
those.
toxins.
Right. So we need to make sure that organic is almost, it's like the first line of defense. And I say organic after these three pillars, because if you're just getting some oats, you know, with a little bit of mushroom root on it that have never seen the light of day and are, you know, never even formed into a real mushroom, it's really easy to get that to be organic, right? You buy organic oats and that's what you're selling. But so that's why I'm saying it as a fourth pillar, because first we need the mushroom, second we need the wood, third we need the extraction, and then to quality check, you know, and if a brand is going through all those three steps, it's very likely that they're also going to be an organic mushroom. But then that kind of fifth stage to really ensure you're getting a high quality supplement is the third party testing, right? So ensuring that even beyond it being organic, it can still contain, mycotoxins, molds, yeasts, even traces of pesticides, herbicides, or radiation. And so really making sure that not the brand itself, but a third-party certification is vetting the quality of it.
Oh, wonderful. Wow. This is a deep lesson on everything we have to do, but I think this is very important. And I believe
important.
I'm gonna go back into the Four Sigmatic because you were saying they are a company that you associated with because of their quality, right? So it's good for people to know, because let's say I don't have time to research all that, but then it's good to know a company that is working with the mushrooms in this high level of quality.
Yeah.
Because we want that for our health. This summit is all about our health. It's all about our mental, emotional, physical, and even spiritual health. But it's important. That's very important to know that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And the last thing I do want to mention is even if you check off, and not to be overwhelming, but if we check off all 5 of those pillars, the last thing that we really need to ensure is that you're getting a dose that's efficacious, right? So you could you could have all 5 of those pillars checked off, but then someone could, what I call pixie dust, a product and only put a teeny amount of the functional dose. And of course, you won't feel it or likely notice any
You will not
difference. Like,
have an effect in the body that is necessary. Yeah.
that's it. And so, yeah, once you're getting a real mushroom that's been grown on wood and extracted, the low end dose that we should look for, the minimum effective, is 500 milligrams or half a gram. And so that's if the extraction has been dried and you're getting it in a capsule or a pre-extracted powder. We really want that 500 milligram base. And again, there's so much, and I say this last, like as a 6th thing, because what we're seeing on the shelves are people saying, oh, there's 2,000 grams of X mushroom in here. But what they've done is they've grown a little bit of the mushroom roots on a lot of grain, and then they've dried the grain and ground it up. And you're basically getting, 2,000 milligrams of oatmeal with a little bit of mushroom roots. So yeah, that weighs a lot more than the real mushroom that's been extracted, super concentrated, and then spray dried right into a powder, which is why I say mushroom powders are not created equal. So once we've, again, in that order, checked off all the things, then we can say, okay, 500 milligrams is a good, effective starting dose for most bodies.
Oh, wow. Thank you. Thank you. That's really important. So this has been really great. Thank you for sharing so much of this, your knowledge with us. So,
of course.
So I want to tell everyone, don't get scary. We will learn more and more about the mushrooms. I hope you do. I want to know more and bringing back so many times this memory, because when you said about the water, what I sent to my sister, if I'm not wrong, was at that time, there was no pills or supplements. You have a bag of the dry mushrooms. And
yes.
then, and I don't know how. I don't know if
I have lots behind me
because it was 20 years ago. If I sent by mail or someone brought to Brazil, yeah, like this exactly.
Yes. This is our reishi.
I was like, there was a bag of this, and she received it. She said, "I don't want to eat this." I said, "No, you're not going to eat. You're going to make a tea." I'm telling her, and you're gonna buy it. I think someone gave me, because when you said hours and hours, that's immediately remind me of telling her, you have to boil this for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours until you get a tea concentrated to drink it. And I have a special pot, is an Asian pot for herbs, and when you get these barks and things, that I put it there, and I put a lot of water, and the machine, it's automatic, and then it lets you know when it has gone to the concentration. And
amazing.
It's wonderful. That's things that happen when you live in Asia.
I need the name of this pot. Maybe you can send me a picture of it. It sounds great.
It's
fantastic.
Great because once it's really concentrated, it stops automatically, and then you drink, and sometimes you close your nose to drink. But it's very effective, very effective. Like your health can be really, really changed with that. So I want to thank you so much. I want to tell the audience once again, now more officially, that Danielle is offering as a gift a copy of her new book, which she mentioned here, Healing Adaptogens, the definite guide to using super herbs and mushrooms for your body's restoration, defense, and performance. Thank you so much, Danielle, for offering your book. I think this is great for everyone to get more information and be more conscious about this, and especially about what we were talking last in terms of quality of what you're getting, quality from your money, what you're paying for, so that people can also demand. Because if no one buys something from a company because they know it's not good, the company cannot continue.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to finish our session today. This has been really great. I really appreciate you here. And I would like to just ask if you have any final word you would like to share with people who have, autoimmune condition or on any chronic condition, as a herbalist, a nutritionist, and, what would you share with us?
Yeah, I think one of the themes that I hear for a lot of people that are working with autoimmune conditions is um, it's really hard to trust the body, right? We talk about, oh, how can I listen to my body more and trust my body more? And I hear, well, my body's trying to attack me, or my body's not on my side. How can I trust it? And so, really, leaning on the plants and mushrooms has been um, an ancient ally. You know, we've never worked with our bodies and our healing on our own. We've not only leaned on the help of healers and practitioners, but the intelligence of nature to support us and to reignite that life force, as we talked about, that chi, that prana, that energy that is our true essence and our true self. And so, um, yeah, just to remind everyone that you're so far from alone. You have so many allies in the form of humans, fungi, plants that are here to help you and that have always been here. And we get into the depths and the nitty gritty of the constituents, the extraction, all of this to ensure that um, that life force can be activated again. And it doesn't have to be complicated, right? People like us have done the research and found the brands for you
Thanks to
and the
you.
supplement companies that we can say, hey, this is, try this, and in a safe way, right? That the it's not like you have to choose and compromise one for the other, but know that there are safe options that are gentle, that will work with your body, and to be patient, right? Time is an illusion. So if we
Yeah.
can be patient,
And also,
just like,
I love to say normally healing is a journey. It's not one, stop here, done. It is a journey. And sometimes we go up, a little bit down, but we have to know if we're going toward the right direction. And I
that's
think
it.
that's very important. It's like,
Yeah.
like being gentle, and time is an illusion. I think it matches with,
Yes.
yeah.
And yeah, sometimes we feel like we're going in a circle, but instead kind of shift your perspective a teeny bit, even 1 degree, and you can maybe recognize that you're not going in a circle, but you're actually going in a forward spiral, right? And as you mentioned, sometimes we're here and here, and it feels like, oh, I've been here again, but it's
A little,
progressing in this
yeah,
way.
not
And
exactly.
yeah, and that the mushrooms are here, and I'm so grateful that um, we have access to them. For many thousands of years, it was illegal for common people to get their hands on these mushrooms. They were so powerful. You had to be in the royal class and an emperor and a king and queen to use them. And now we have them right at our fingertips on Amazon, in our Whole Foods markets, in our grocery stores. And so to really know how to purchase them and consume consciously, and know that they're here and ready to start supporting your journey.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you. This is awesome. I really
You're
love,
so
and I
welcome.
am getting your book and knowing more about, because
Oh,
I already knew Reishi for more than 20 years ago. So now even
yes.
getting to know more, because I think it's so important though. So thank you, Danielle, for your time,
Thank you.
expertise, and all this work, because as you say, I don't need to know all of that because you have been doing the work. Thank you. And I appreciate your energy and time, this and doing this. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.